Everyone, I hope you all are doing well. Welcome to this episode of the Outdoor Gear Review. Just in case you don't know, my name is Luke. This is the Teton Sports Vista 2-person quick tent, and this is my review of this shelter. Already on YouTube, I have a handful of videos concerning this tent. One is a preview, and it goes over every single factor, every single feature, every single stat concerning this tent. In this episode, I'm going to focus more on my review of this product, the pros and cons. I will touch upon the stats, but just briefly, very quickly. So if you want more information, if you have a question that's not answered in this episode, you will find it in the preview or in the test night episode. This tent has been fully tested, not only in regards to waterproofness, but condensation, airflow, and so on. All of which I will talk about in this episode. As a summary, this is what the Vista 2 tent is. This is a 2-person, 2-door tent. It is a quick pop-up tent. The frame is attached to the body, and as you can see here, you can easily set this tent up in less than 1 minute. All you have to do is open up the frame, make sure that the poles lock into place, secure the top locking mechanism, put on the fly, and then you're good to go. It's that simple, everyone. Because this is a quick setup tent, it also breaks down very quickly. What may not be apparent right now is the size of this tent. First off, the size alone is big. The pack size is large. This is not something that you're going to take backpacking. This is a car camping tent only. Not only is the size large, but it's also heavy. Speaking of which, when it's all packed up, it is 33 inches by 7 inches by 7 inches. I know I just went over the dimensions, but I want you all to see me holding this so you can gauge at just how big this is. This is a very big tent. It's one thing to hear the numbers, it's something else to see it. When it comes to the weight, you're looking at 6.3 pounds. With the setup dimensions, it is 82 inches long, 60 inches wide, and 41 inches tall. This is an inexpensive tent, and as far as the materials go, they're on the cheaper side. The fly is a 75D 190T taffeta. This is a polyester. The floor material is the exact same as the fly, and when it comes to the mesh, that's some form of polyester. I suppose we should talk about the frame. This is made from fiberglass and also plastic. This tent is available in numerous colors, gray and silver, brown, green, and also yellow. There's a 1-person version, a 2-person version, and this tent can also be purchased with a cot as a sort of set. Lastly, everyone, as far as the stats go, when it comes to price, $120. Before I start with my review, let's go over some features which you may not be aware of concerning this tent. As I mentioned before, you can set this up on top of a cot. With the 2-person version, it's actually cots. You would have to set it up on 2. If you have the 1-person, just 1. This tent includes the standard rain fly, which I will put on in a minute. There is an extended elite rain fly that the company offers, which is longer for the use with a cot. One very important aspect concerning Teton Sports is the lifetime warranty. That, my friends, is worth its weight in gold. Let's take a second here and let me show you the tent in quick detail. Looking at the side of the tent here, you can see one of the doors. You have 2-way zippers. That means that you can open this from either side if you want. The body attaches to the poles via these clips. The tent does feature a very aggressive bathtub floor. The front and back of the tent are even higher than the sides. With the poles, you have these locking hubs. Here's the fiberglass poles. And this is the setup mechanism. You have this cord here. Basically, you pull this up, you push this down, and it all clicks together. Then you can use this to lock this hub. As you can see there, the zippers are super smooth. On the inside, you have one pocket, another mesh pocket, and up at the top you have a mesh gear caddy. It should be mentioned with this tent, all of the seams are taped. Lastly, everyone, you can see the other door on the other side. Now it's time to go over my review of this tent, starting with the pros. Pro number 1 is the quality of this tent. Overall, the quality of this is not bad at all. There's been no issues when it comes to threads, loose threads. There's no issues when it comes to the seam tape or the stitches. Everything about this tent looks great. Next up, everyone, considering the fact that this is a car camping tent, the weight and the size is not bad. I do have an issue here, which is actually a con, and I'll just go ahead and talk about it. The company refers to this as the quick hiker. You're not going to hike with this tent, and you're definitely not going to do so quickly because of the size. It's very large, it's very heavy. Calling it the quick hiker just makes no sense at all. This point alone confuses so many people and leads to negative reviews for the company. I've seen these online, I've seen them on Amazon. People are pissed. You can't backpack with this. You can't fit this in a backpack. You can't take this out on a hiking trail. The company needs to address that because calling it the quick hiker is simply flat out wrong. Speaking of the large size of this tent, this is plenty big for 2 people and some gear. The vestibules themselves offer a good amount of space. There's enough space under the vestibule for them to be useful. Plus you have the pockets on the inside, you have the gear caddy, which is included. Unfortunately, no ground sheet is included with this tent. You have to supply your own. Or in this case, use multiple ground sheets because this tent is so big. Next folks, the setup process and the breakdown process for this tent is super simple. You could set it up, you could break it down in minutes. It takes no time at all. Talking about the setup process specifically, there is a slight con, which I will talk about now actually. So when it comes to setting it up, you have that hub that locks into place, right? And you push down on it and it locks it all together. That is something that you need to really pay close attention to. You need to make sure that you don't get anything misaligned. You need to make sure that you don't have that cord like in the way of that locking mechanism, because if you're not paying attention and you get that thing jammed in there or the whole system misaligned, it can be an issue getting it all apart again. So I'm going to say this, the setup process is very easy as long as you really pay attention, but if you're not careful, you could definitely jam it up and it can be somewhat finicky. Next, the tent has proven itself to be 100% waterproof with my testing. I've had no leaking issues at all, even in very heavy rain events. So as far as waterproofness goes, I'm impressed. The last pro that I have for this tent are the color options. You can find this in numerous colors and hopefully can satisfy your tastes. Now it's time to move over to the cons that I have for this tent. Now already I've touched upon some. The setup process with that locking mechanism, it can be somewhat finicky. 9 times out of 10, you're not going to have an issue, but that 10th time, you're not going to be paying attention. You can kind of jam it up. Luckily, it's a problem that you can generally fix with a little bit of strength, just pulling it apart and then redoing it. Anyways, let's talk about some big issues when it comes to this tent. Big issue number one is condensation. The way that the fly lays over the poles and the inability to pull the fly away from the body leads to some pretty bad condensation inside of this tent. The condensation's so bad in this tent that I would be hesitant to recommend it to those who are going to use this in wet environments. Yes, it's waterproof, but if you have to seal this up, that condensation is going to be pretty bad. There is one vent on this tent, but unfortunately it doesn't open up very wide and it does nothing to solve the condensation issues. I want to take a second here and elaborate more on the issues when it comes to condensation. So this is the front of the tent and this is the back side. Here on the sides, you can see that the fly pulls away, right? On the front and the back, that's not the case. There is no way to pull the fly away from the body, which means when you have condensation forming inside of this tent, it runs down the walls, it comes into contact with the mesh on the inside, it goes inside of the tent. There's no separation here. And as these materials get wet, they stretch some, they come into direct contact with the body itself. Another con that I have for this tent are the tent stakes themselves. These are just plain Jane, very inexpensive shepherd hooks. And as you can see, they can bend very easily. Most of mine are bent already, and I've been very delicate with these. In general, shepherd hooks are not that good. When you put these in the ground, they have a tendency to twist, and that can cause all sorts of issues when it comes to the setup of your tent. Let me say this, folks, if you plan to purchase this tent, or maybe you've already purchased it, this is what I recommend doing. Replace these tent stakes, and get yourself some tarp clips so you can pull this fly away from the body. You may also want to get yourself some elastic cordage. That's going to make setting this up and pulling it away very easy. An additional con that I have for this tent is the storage bag. Unfortunately, this storage bag is not quite big enough for this tent, not in the real world. If you're inside of your living room and you have all the time to roll it up super tight, you can get it to fit. But in the real world, you're outside, everything's soaking wet, you're trying to break it down in a hurry. Getting it to fit inside of this is a real pain in the ass. It's a real chore. I should say this, everyone, Teton Sports is not the only company who's guilty of this practice. They manufacture a tent and then they put it inside the world's smallest storage bag. A lot of companies do this, and I have to question whether or not these companies are actually using their own products. Because if they were, they would fix this, right? They wouldn't do this. Having a storage bag that's really small is just nonsensical. It makes no sense. The last big issue that I have concerning this tent are the fiberglass poles and the plastic hubs. These are materials that you will have to be very careful with. Already there's a ton of reports of this tent breaking in the poles, the plastic hardware breaking. I've not had any sort of issues, and I should talk about that. With my testing here, I've been testing this tent out for over 6 months now, and I've had no issues. But the thing is this, you have to be very careful, you have to be very delicate. Because this tent features fiberglass poles and plastic hubs, this is not a storm tent. This is not a tent that you should take out into a thunderstorm. If you have a passing rain shower, great. A knockdown thunderstorm, this may not hold up. So make sure to pay attention to the weather forecast, and if there's a chance of strong storms, don't take this tent out. Also, the company does not include any sort of guy lines with this tent. There are placements for guy lines, some loops, but no guy lines are included. Or at least with my tent, there was none included. As far as the pros and cons go, that's pretty much it. To wrap up this review, to summarize, there are issues when it comes to condensation, there's issues when it comes to the design of the fly, you can't pull it away from the body. That's a big problem. It really is. In the end, there's just too many issues concerning this tent, and I cannot recommend it. I like it. I don't love it. I think there's better tents out there. The entire quick setup mechanism, in my opinion, is a little bit gimmicky. I prefer the traditional pop-up style of tent better than this locking mechanism. So with that being said, everyone, I am done. Make sure to comment down below and share your thoughts. What do you all think about the Quick Hiker 2? I can't help but laugh, right? Because no one's going hiking with this tent. That's hilarious. Teton Sports, fix the name, increase the size of the storage bag, change out the tent stakes, fix the fly. Do all of those things, and this tent will make a whole lot more sense. I'm not sure if they can improve the strength of the frame itself, but that is something that should be addressed. There's so many reports, so many accounts of broken frames. I don't know. It's something to think about. But Teton Sports does have a lifetime warranty. That's something to think about as well. Before you go, hit the thumbs up. It does help the channel with the algorithm and all that good stuff. Until next time, be well, strength and honor. See you again soon. Bye, folks.